The rand a little weaker. That is the bad news for many investors. Now, South Africa is gearing up for Budget 3.0. In the first budget, the finance minister himself was a no-show after a cabinet meeting saw outrage over a planned 2 percentage point VAT hike. In the second budget, the minister reduced the VAT hike to half a percentage point, but the DA and the Government of National Unity voted against that. The first budget bill passed through Parliament, but it's now being withdrawn after an out-of-court settlement to can any VAT hike. So to discuss, we're joined by co-founder of the Institute for Economic Justice, Neil Coleman. Mr. Coleman, thank you. If you think in terms of economic justice, was a VAT increase always a bad option?
It was always a terrible idea, Francis, and the big question facing the country is why did Treasury, having encountered this massive opposition by society as well as all the political parties, persist in driving this agenda of a VAT increase. And I think this reflects a deeper problem in society. And, you know, it's part of this idea that we have a Treasury that is so powerful that it feels that it can dictate an economic agenda and has up until this point been unaccountable. If there's one good thing that's emerged from this budget fiasco, it is that people are now demanding that Treasury be held accountable for the choices that it's making.
Yeah. Are you saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that perhaps Treasury was trying to prove a point, or the finance minister was trying to prove a point? Because, yes, he clung on to that half a percentage point, whilst at the same time saying he doesn't know what all the fuss is about. It's not that big. It's just half a percentage point. So presumably, then, if it's so small, he could have found a way around it.
Totally, and many institutions, including my institute, the Institute for Economic Justice, and various other experts and political parties, have placed multiple proposals on the table for alternative revenue sources. We're talking about 13.5 billion we would have achieved through the 0.5% VAT increase this year. That's less than 0.5% of the budget. So you're absolutely correct. It is an attempt to prove a point. It's an attempt to impose a particular vision of what constitutes efficiency, so-called, on society. And I think, Francis, what we're seeing is that there's a deep contradiction now at the heart of government, with Treasury trying to impose one agenda, and it seems like the Minister of Finance and the political leadership of the ANC and presumably the Government of National Unity are pulling in another direction, because the 2025 budget actually, compared to the previous austerity budgets over the last 5 years, is a mildly expansionary budget. They've begun to invest in frontline services, in improving social grants, etc. And it's almost like Treasury turned around and said, well, we don't like this, but we're going to sort of show you by imposing a VAT increase. And they continue to follow this sort of logic, where they now are attempting to manufacture a sort of moral panic in society, to say that we're facing a fiscal crisis, there's a 75 billion rand hole in revenue, which simply isn't the case. It's simply not true. It's not even 5% of that 75 billion. We estimate that there's a shortfall of about 2.7 billion as a result of the suspension of the VAT increase. So it actually looks like there is a contradiction between the minister and his officials. The minister went public to say that austerity has failed to achieve the targets that government had set, including containing debt, because what it's done is it's stifled growth. And instead of growing GDP, you have a rising debt with a stagnating GDP. So really, when Parliament looks at these choices in Budget 3.0, it needs to start having some fundamental discussions about what type of fiscal policy is appropriate, given the massive developmental challenges that we face.
So if it's only 2.7 billion, so you're not concerned that in budget 3.0 there are going to be cuts somewhere that may be painful to try and make up the gap?
We're very concerned, very concerned. In the court papers, the Treasury said that, I'm just looking for their actual wording, they said a drastic reduction in spending is inevitable. And they referred to the 75 billion rand, mythical shortfall, which doesn't exist. The 2.7 refers to the net shortfall after, we've done away with the VAT zero rating, the extension of the VAT zero rating, as well as taking into account the 8.8 billion revenue overrun, which SARS has achieved this year. So there is no massive challenge in relation to the shortfall. But our worry is that Treasury is now, as I said, through manufacturing this idea of a crisis, is laying the basis for large-scale cuts. And I think that political parties and civil society more broadly need to interrogate very closely the figures which are put out in this budget, because they are simply not borne out by the facts.
How then, finally, do we grow this economy, allow businesses to thrive because they do create jobs, and provide appropriate safety nets? I would be interested in your opinion, because some believe that South Africa is creating dependency through the wide issuing of social grants. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a popular perception along those lines. And I think what a lot of people don't understand, in the poorest communities, when you inject large income, our retailers know that people go and they spend that, and people spend it in local communities. So it's not just supporting people in dire conditions, it's also generating income circulation and economic multipliers in communities. And that's, in a way, a microcosm for the economy more broadly, because unless there's significant public investment and stimulus into the economy, you're going to have the continued problem of economic stagnation. A lot of us analysts talk about an investment strike by business that has taken place since 1994, but few people are aware of the fact that there's been a public sector investment strike by the government and by parastatals over the last number of years. And you can't grow an economy if you are not investing. So I think that's the critical thing, to have strategic public investment which has high economic multipliers, including through putting money directly into people's hands through grants, but not only that, through industrial policy, through lowering the cost of investing, through a much more developmental macroeconomic and monetary policy. And this is, I think, what the minister was hinting at when he said that the past austerity policies have failed. But it looks like there's now a contestation in the heart of government between Treasury and the political leadership. And it's going to be very important that we focus quite strongly on the alternatives to move us in a different direction.
All right, thank you very much. The co-founder of the Institute for Economic Justice, Neil Coleman.